Right now, someone is trying to manipulate you. Maybe it's subtle, a guilt trip disguised as concern, a compliment with strings attached, an offer that sounds generous but comes with invisible chains. Maybe it's obvious, threats, ultimatums, emotional blackmail. Either way, someone, somewhere is trying to pull your strings. And for most people, it works. They get played without even realizing it. They dance to someone else's tune and call it their own choice. They give away their power and wonder why they feel so empty. But there are others, people who seem immune. You've met them. Someone tries to guilt them and they don't flinch. Someone tries to threaten them and they stay calm.
Someone tries to seduce them with false promises and they see right through it. They're not cold, they're not paranoid, they're just impossible to manipulate. What do they know that everyone else doesn't? Carl Jung spent decades studying the human psyche, and he discovered something that explains everything. The people who can't be manipulated aren't smarter, they aren't tougher. They've simply done one thing that most people never do. They've faced their own shadow so completely that no one can use it against them. Every manipulation tactic works by exploiting something hidden. Your secret fears, your buried shame, your denied desires, your unacknowledged weaknesses. Manipulators are shadow hunters.
They search for the parts of you that you've rejected, and they use those parts as handles to control you. But what happens when there's nothing hidden? What happens when you've already faced every dark corner of your psyche? What happens when you know yourself so completely that no one can show you anything you haven't already seen? You become unmanipulable. Today, I'm going to decode the psychology of people who can't be controlled. Not so you can become a cold, isolated fortress, but so you can move through the world with your eyes open, your power intact, and your choices truly your own. Before we begin, drop this affirmation in the comments. No one pulls my strings. Let's decode the unmanipulable mind.
The first trait of people who can't be manipulated is they know their own darkness completely. Most people have blind spots, corners of their psyche they've never explored, desires they've never admitted, fears they've never faced, shames they've never processed. These blind spots are exactly where manipulators attack. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But there's more to it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, others can direct your life too. Your blind spots are their control panels. Think about how guilt trips work. Someone makes you feel bad about something you're already secretly ashamed of.
If you weren't carrying that hidden shame, the guilt trip would have nothing to hook into. It would slide right off. But because you have unprocessed guilt buried in your shadow, their words find a wound and press on it. The same applies to every manipulation tactic. Fear-based manipulation works because you have unacknowledged fears. Flattery works because you have unmet needs for validation. False promises work because you have denied desires you haven't admitted to yourself. People who can't be manipulated have done the excavation. They've gone into their shadow with a flashlight and mapped every corner. They know their fears, so fear tactics don't surprise them. They know their shames, so guilt trips don't destabilize them.
They know their desires, so false promises don't seduce them. Jung called this shadow work, and he considered it the most important psychological task a human can undertake. Not because it makes you perfect, but because it makes you conscious, and consciousness is immunity. When you know your own darkness, manipulators lose their power. They try to reveal something shameful about you, but you've already accepted it. They try to threaten you with exposure, but there's nothing left to expose. They try to exploit your weakness, but you've already transformed your weakness into self-knowledge. The unmanipulable person isn't someone with no shadow. They're someone who has befriended their shadow. They've sat with every uncomfortable truth about themselves until it lost its charge. Now no one can weaponize what they've already embraced. Start today. What are you most afraid of others discovering about you? What would you be devastated if people knew? That's your vulnerability. That's where you can be controlled. Face it, accept it, integrate it, and watch that vulnerability transform into strength. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I have no hidden weaknesses. The second trait of people who can't be manipulated is they have zero need for external validation. This is the master key to psychological freedom. Most manipulation works by offering or threatening validation. Do what I want and I'll approve of you. Disobey me and I'll reject you. This only works on people who need that approval. Think about the power someone has over you when you desperately need them to like you. They can criticize you and you'll change your behavior. They can threaten to leave and you'll abandon your boundaries. They can withdraw attention and you'll chase them. Your need for their validation becomes a leash they can pull anytime they want. Jung understood this deeply. He said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Why terrifying? Because complete self-acceptance means you no longer need others to validate your existence. And that need is what most people build their entire identity around. People who can't be manipulated have severed this dependency. They validate themselves, from themselves, for themselves. When someone offers approval, it's pleasant, but not necessary. When someone threatens rejection, it's noted, but not devastating. The internal source of worth is so strong that external sources become optional. This doesn't mean they don't value relationships. It means they don't need relationships to feel valuable. There's an enormous difference. The person who needs a relationship will tolerate anything to keep it. The person who values a relationship but doesn't need it will only accept treatment that matches their self-worth. Manipulators can smell neediness from a mile away. It's their favorite scent. When they find someone desperate for approval, they know they've found someone they can control. But when they encounter someone who genuinely doesn't need their validation, they're powerless. Their primary weapon has no ammunition. Think about the most dignified person you know. Do they chase approval? Do they change themselves to fit in? Do they crumble when criticized? Probably not. They have an internal anchor that keeps them steady regardless of external weather. This anchor is built through self-knowledge and self-acceptance. The more you know yourself, the less you need others to tell you who you are. The more you accept yourself, the less you need others to accept you first. Start today.
Notice how much of your behavior is driven by seeking approval or avoiding rejection. Notice how often you say yes when you mean no because you're afraid of disappointment. Notice how you edit yourself to be more palatable. These are the chains, and only you can remove them. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My worth comes from within. The third trait of people who can't be manipulated is they feel emotions without being controlled by them. Emotions are the primary entry point for manipulation. Make someone angry and they'll act impulsively. Make someone afraid and they'll do anything for safety. Make someone feel guilty and they'll comply to relieve the discomfort. Make someone feel special and they'll ignore red flags. Manipulators are emotional puppet masters. They pull strings that trigger feelings, and those feelings drive behavior. For most people, this works flawlessly. Emotion arises, reaction follows. Manipulation succeeds. But some people have a gap, a space between stimulus and response. They feel the emotion fully, but they don't automatically act on it. They experience the anger without exploding. They feel the fear without fleeing. They notice the guilt without immediately complying. They enjoy the flattery without being blinded by it. Jung described this as the difference between being possessed by an emotion and being conscious of an emotion. When you're possessed, the emotion controls you. When you're conscious, you control your response to the emotion. This gap is everything. It's where freedom lives. It's where manipulation dies. Think about the last time someone pushed your emotional buttons. Maybe they said something that triggered instant rage. Maybe they made you feel suddenly afraid. Maybe they induced guilt that seemed to come from nowhere. In that moment, did you have a choice, or did you just react? The unmanipulable person always has a choice. Not because they don't feel things. They often feel things more intensely than others because they're not suppressing anything. But between the feeling and the action, there's a moment of consciousness, a moment of asking, what do I actually want to do here?
This skill is developed through practice, through learning to sit with uncomfortable emotions without immediately trying to escape them, through watching your own reactions with curiosity instead of being swept away by them, through building the mental muscle that can hold space between trigger and response. Manipulators hate this gap. Their entire strategy depends on automatic reactions. When someone stops reacting automatically, the manipulation short-circuits. They try to provoke anger and get calm observation instead. They try to induce fear and get measured assessment instead. They try to trigger guilt and get thoughtful reflection instead. Start today. The next time you feel a strong emotion, pause. Don't suppress it. Don't act on it.
Just feel it fully while asking yourself, what would I choose to do if this feeling wasn't pushing me? That question is the beginning of emotional sovereignty. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I feel everything and control my response. The fourth trait of people who can't be manipulated is they have clear boundaries and enforce them without guilt. Most people have vague boundaries. They know something feels wrong, but they can't articulate exactly where the line is. And even when they can articulate it, they won't enforce it. They'll let people cross the line and then feel resentful instead of taking action. Manipulators exploit this vagueness. They push a little, test the boundaries, see what they can get away with.
When they find someone who won't push back, they keep taking, inch by inch, until suddenly they're running the whole show and their victim is wondering how it happened. Jung understood that clear boundaries require self-knowledge. You can't protect what you don't know. You can't defend limits you haven't defined. The person who doesn't know their own values will have their values defined by whoever is most pushy. People who can't be manipulated have done the boundary work. They know exactly what they will and won't accept. Not vaguely, precisely. They've thought it through in advance, so they don't have to figure it out under pressure. When someone approaches a boundary, they don't negotiate.
They simply state the limit and enforce the consequence. Here's what separates the unmanipulable from everyone else. They enforce without guilt. Most people feel bad about having boundaries. They worry about being mean. They feel selfish for saying no. They carry guilt for protecting themselves. This guilt becomes another manipulation handle. Someone just has to make them feel guilty about their boundary and they'll abandon it. The unmanipulable person has processed this guilt already. They've realized that boundaries aren't selfish, they're necessary. They've understood that protecting yourself isn't mean, it's sane. They've integrated the part of themselves that wants to please everyone and made peace with disappointing some people. Think about what happens when you set a boundary and someone pushes back. Do you hold firm, or do you feel that creeping guilt that makes you want to soften, explain, or withdraw the boundary entirely? That guilt is the crack manipulators exploit. Boundaries without enforcement are just suggestions, and manipulators don't follow suggestions. They follow power. When they see someone who sets limits and actually maintains them, they move on to easier targets. Start today. Identify one boundary you've been letting people cross. Define it clearly. Decide in advance what the consequence will be if it's crossed. Then wait for the test. When it comes, and it will, enforce without apology. Watch how it changes the dynamic.
Drop this affirmation in the comments. I enforce my limits without guilt. The fifth trait of people who can't be manipulated is they understand manipulation tactics so well they can see them coming.
Ignorance is vulnerability. If you don't know how manipulation works, you can't recognize it when it's happening to you. You just feel confused, guilty, or obligated without understanding why. Jung believed in making the unconscious conscious, and this applies to the tactics others use against you as well. When you understand the mechanics of manipulation, you see the machinery behind the performance. The magic trick stops working once you know how it's done. People who can't be manipulated have studied the playbook.
They know about love bombing, the excessive affection designed to create false intimacy and obligation. They know about gaslighting, the deliberate distortion of reality to make you doubt your own perception. They know about triangulation, the use of third parties to create jealousy or insecurity. They know about intermittent reinforcement, the unpredictable pattern of reward and punishment that creates addictive attachment. When they encounter these tactics, they don't feel confused. They feel recognition. They see the pattern, they name it, and in naming it, they neutralize it. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain."
Learning about manipulation can be painful because you'll recognize tactics that were used on you before. You'll realize you were played. You'll see relationships differently. Some illusions will shatter. But this pain is the price of freedom. The person who doesn't understand manipulation will keep falling for it. The person who has studied it can never be fooled the same way twice. This knowledge also changes how you view manipulators themselves. When you understand their tactics, you start to see their desperation, their neediness, their fundamental inability to create genuine connection. Manipulation is what people do when they don't believe they can get their needs met honestly. It's a confession of weakness disguised as a power play.
The unmanipulable person looks at manipulators with understanding rather than fear. They see the wounded child using the only tools they have. This doesn't mean they tolerate the behavior, but it removes the intimidation factor. It's hard to be afraid of someone once you understand them completely. Start today. Study manipulation tactics. Read about narcissistic abuse patterns. Learn about coercive control. Understand the psychology of influence and persuasion. Not to use these tools against others, but to recognize when they're being used against you. Knowledge is your armor. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I see every manipulation before it lands.
The sixth trait of people who can't be manipulated is they're willing to walk away from anything. This is the nuclear option, the ultimate power, the final freedom. And most people don't have it. Most people are attached to relationships that drain them, to jobs that disrespect them, to situations that harm them. They know they should leave, but they can't. The fear of loss is greater than the pain of staying, and manipulators exploit this attachment ruthlessly. Think about the power someone has over you when they know you won't leave. They can treat you however they want. They can violate your boundaries repeatedly. They can take and take and take, because they know that no matter what they do, you'll stay.
Your attachment is their permission slip. Jung called this unhealthy attachment a form of psychological imprisonment. The person who cannot walk away has given their freedom to whoever holds the key to what they're attached to. People who can't be manipulated have cultivated radical detachment. Not coldness, not inability to connect, but the genuine willingness to lose anything and anyone if the cost of keeping them is too high. They love fully, they commit completely, but they don't need, and that absence of need preserves their power. This willingness to walk away isn't a bluff, it's not a negotiating tactic, it's a genuine internal state. They've faced the fear of loss. They've imagined the worst-case scenario.
They've made peace with the possibility of being alone, losing the job, ending the relationship, walking away from the situation. Having truly accepted that possibility, they're no longer controlled by the fear of it. Think about how this changes every interaction. When someone knows you're willing to walk away, they treat you differently. They can't take you for granted. They can't push too far. They can't assume you'll accept anything.
Your willingness to lose them becomes the very thing that makes them less likely to lose you. This is paradoxical but true. The person who is willing to walk away often never has to, because their energy communicates something that prevents the mistreatment in the first place.
Manipulators sense it immediately and look for easier targets. Start today. Examine your attachments. What are you so afraid of losing that you tolerate mistreatment to keep it? That attachment is your cage. Face the fear of losing it directly. Really sit with what it would mean. Process the grief in advance and notice how your power returns when you realize you could survive that loss. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I can walk away from anything. You now understand the 6 traits of people who can't be manipulated. They know their shadow completely. They need no external validation. They feel without being controlled. They enforce boundaries without guilt. They understand manipulation tactics. They're willing to walk away.
These traits aren't gifts some people are born with. They're skills anyone can develop. They're the result of doing inner work that most people avoid. They're the payoff of facing yourself more honestly than is comfortable. Jung dedicated his life to showing us that psychological freedom is possible. Not easy, not comfortable, but possible. He said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Every trait of the unmanipulable person is a choice to know yourself, a choice to value yourself, a choice to protect yourself. Right now, you have the same choice. You can continue being susceptible to whoever wants to pull your strings, or you can do the work of becoming someone whose strings have been cut. The manipulators of the world are counting on you staying unconscious. They're counting on your unexamined shame, your desperate need for approval, your automatic emotional reactions, your vague boundaries, your ignorance of their tactics, your fear of loss. These are the tools of their trade, and they only work on people who haven't done their inner work. The moment you shine a light on your own shoe, you take that tool away. The moment you generate your own validation, you take that tool away. The moment you master your emotional responses, you take that tool away. The moment you enforce your boundaries without guilt, you take that tool away. The moment you understand how manipulation works, you take that tool away.
The moment you become willing to walk away, you take away their last remaining tool. And when all the tools are gone, what can they do? Nothing. They'll move on. They'll find someone else who hasn't done the work, and you'll be free. This freedom doesn't mean isolation. The unmanipulable person often has the deepest connections, because their connections are chosen, not coerced. They're based on genuine compatibility, not desperate need. They're maintained through mutual respect, not fear of loss. This is the life that's possible when no one can control you. Relationships that are real, choices that are truly yours, a self that belongs to you and you alone. If this video showed you the path to psychological freedom, hit that like button.
If you want more content on becoming uncontrollable, subscribe and ring the notification bell. Share this with someone who keeps getting played and needs to understand why. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You cannot become who you truly are while someone else is pulling your strings. Cut the strings, face your shadow, build your fortress, and become someone no one can ever manipulate again.